All right, some technique, some stuff everybody likes. Let's pick a book. Pick one. I don't know which one. Maybe I'll pick one of these. Just happen, whatever I have around me. All right. Jack Welch, self-help category, nonfiction, a book I'd read in the afternoon. How do we get through this bad boy? Well, a couple things, some technique things. First of all, preparation. I like to have a bookmark and I like to have a pen. Okay? A bookmark and pen. Why? Well, I like to just circle stuff. Now, this is a paper towel that I happen, or a napkin that I happen to be using. I use anything I can. I should have some more formal one. And I've tried highlighters and stuff, but I've just kind of stuck with just pen. And all I do, it's a little hard to see here, but I just circle it. Good points. That's it. I used to write in the back of the book. You can do that if you want, but I found just circling, because then if you want to look back at the notes, you just flip through the book and you can see if you use a bright black ink, it's relatively helpful. So, with this book, I'm trying to think how I want to do this because I don't want it to be too boring. Let me actually start. I'm going to make this the first video.
The intro?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to combine the intro and then this one, or is this...
No, I'm going to make this the first one.
Okay.
Let me think how I want to do this because I realize I kind of did it out of order. No, I'll keep going. This will be the last one. In the first one, I'm going to put some of the highlights of what they're going to get in the other ones. Okay, in case because a lot of people don't watch all the videos. So if you put all the good stuff at the end, 90% of people never see it. So we'll go back to this.
Okay.
All right, this is the last video, the sixth one, and we'll record on one. All right, so I want to go a little more in depth. You saw me do this in the beginning, but I'm going to do a little bit more. Take this book. Let's just get in a little more nitty-gritty and review in case you forgot. So some practicalities of smart/speed/whatever reading words you want to use. Getting a lot of knowledge faster than you've ever done before. Not just knowledge, but end game results. Instinctual changes in your life. Big rewards. So, like I said, elements you need, bookmark. I here have whatever was in front of me, which was a paper towel or napkin. You need just a black and white pen. You can see that I put my little notes right there, okay? I just circle it. That's all I do. And if it's a really good circle, I'll write next to it right here. I'll write some words, like just key reminder words. They don't make sense to anyone else. They make sense to me. Once in a while, if it's amazing stuff, Joel Salatin taught me this, I'll write it in the last page or the first page, blank page of the book. Like the top 3 things in the whole book. That way I can come back to it later. Sometimes now I will add it on my iPhone in iBooks. I'll buy the book if it's especially good, and I'll also download it so it's easy to highlight and email myself the notes. A bonus tip here that I've begun to do over the last years. That's awesome. So the preparation to read is the book, a bookmark, a pen, a place to sit, or lay down is even better. Sitting's not that good for you, even though I'm sitting right now. Put your feet up, lay back. That's better position for the human body, they say. And sometimes I'll have my iBook notes there with the book that I bought. So that costs a little more because I buy the book twice, but sometimes if it's a good investment in myself. So, technique, as we talked about before, quick review. You start out how? Table of contents. That's my starting point. Every day there's a new question. So how much about hot air about something or the biggest dirty secret? Cool and Darwinian. Every brain in the game. It's not about you. The questions that almost got away. It's divided into your company, your competition, your career underneath it all. Okay? Then I will move to the jacket. Now, the reason I don't always start with the jacket, because not all the books I have, I buy them used. Sometimes I don't have a jacket. But I want to know who I'm reading. I actually read the little things in the back. You know, the quotes. Tom Brokaw, quote. I love to read, usually the back jacket, I read that too, because that gives you the why I should respect this person. Jack Welch, Susie Welch, she went to Harvard, okay, blah, blah, all this good stuff. All right, so then I've read that, so I've done a couple passes already through the book. The next thing is the next pass. How do I do that? Well, if I define my end game goal, which for this book was management techniques, I've read why I should trust this guy, how he built Jack Welch to an increased market capitalization of basically $500 billion. I got respect for the guy. My brain can let down its guard a little. I've read the table of contents. I've got a technique that I love that I'm going to show you. I go to the introduction. If there is no introduction, the first chapter. Inevitably, the introduction and the first chapter are almost always the best parts of the book. And the last chapter. So if you notice, I do my little background round, so it's passes, multiple passes through the book. The first pass is the table of contents, and the second pass is the cover and the bio. The third pass is the introduction. The next pass is the first chapter, and then I go to the last chapter. And you'd be amazed with that smart technique how much you've learned. Now, after you've done that, depending on the quality of books, remember, you're not trying to make friends with everybody, but if this book should be in your top book category, then you move to the next area, which is what? That is where you identify key chapters in the book that you missed on purpose. You didn't miss them on accident. And that last one or two passes are on those things. So in this book, as I was reading this, I know why I should study this book, Management, Grew. There was an interesting thing that caught my eye. He has this a section called Your Competition. Well, I'm in a business where competition is something we want to be good at dealing with. So there's page 165 to 245. So I know there's about 80 pages on that subject. So what do? Well, I don't want to read 80 necessarily, but remember your interval of reading we talked about? So if I got a 2-minute interval, I know I'm not going to read 80 pages. If I still have 15 minutes left, or maybe that's taking me 5 minutes to read the introduction, the back in the table of contents, and the introduction, first chapter, last chapter, maybe that's taking half my time, or 10 minutes. So I know I have 5 minutes left. I'll budget and I'll go, well, let's knock out this chapter on budgeting. That's something I'm never been the best at in business, budgeting. So I go to page 189, and I'm like, there I go. I just read that chapter normal. You can read, it's only 189, it's only 5 pages or 6 pages. So now I don't have to speed read. Budgeting, reinventing the ritual. Not to beat around the bush, but the budgeting process has to be the most effective. Not that hard, right? Now, we talked a little bit about this before, so let's go a little more advanced. How am I actually reading? How are my eyes moving? So, I tend to be a little more normal than you would think. I tend to read from the top to the bottom, the left to right. I don't totally read out of order. But, like Jeff Bezos talks about in Everything Store about him, I do not always follow that pattern. There are plenty of times, about 30% of the time, where I read just boom, out of order. And then my brain, over time, has gotten used to this, and yours will too, of being able to piece it together. So in general, I'm reading in order, but not always. If a book is like this, per se, and has like little bullets here, and where's the other one here? Then I always read those first. Leaders celebrate. And then he wrote, work is too much a part of life not to recognize. So I'm like, okay. Celebration. Huge. Hierarchies tend to make little generals out of perfectly normal people. So I piece together. And now the reason, so as you're moving out of order sometimes, realize it's going to tax your brain. And the reason I told you at the beginning that I'm not as big of a fan of speed reading is there is a certain, only a certain amount of information you can cognitively imbibe at once. Take in, drink of, partake of, because your brain gets tired. So that's why I tend to read in the natural order, because if you begin to read out of order, even though there's some speed advantages, you're actually burning through the fuel in your mental gas tank a bit faster. That's why I said I don't recommend that any weird techniques, any super out of the ordinary. You know, there's techniques of only reading the first word of each paragraph and the first sentence, and I do those at times, especially if a book is not very dense and I really need to get to it. But I avoid those somewhat because I found then I get too tired to remember what I read. Now, I'm not going to talk about it in this one, but I've got a special thing on memory. So depending on if you have access to that, you'll be able to see memory techniques on reading. So I cover that in a slightly, because there's a lot of stuff about memory on, because I get that asked a lot. How do you remember what you wrote? What we're talking about in this little mini class that you're in these lessons is the specifics on reading. If you do this right, let me say, the recall, you've done 80% of the recall battle, because you're not trying to take in too much. You're reading with focus. You're reading with intention. When you read and don't tax your brain too much by reading in crazy patterns, you know, some speed readings are like, oh, you just read with your fingers like this. And I've done that, but I've found you still can only take in a certain amount of knowledge. So your memory will go up in the way that we're talking about now. So to review, just to make this clear, you make multiple passes through the books, focusing multiple passes. You focus on those things that people often overlook, which is the table of contents, which gives you the map, and the jacket, which often gives you the authority to release your brain to go, this is a trustworthy source, because you read about the author and you read praise for the book. Now, assuming that it's not they're not tricking you, but this book, they don't have reviews from people that I don't respect, but this guy has Jack Welch, Bill Gates, he has Tom Brokaw, Warren Buffett, Giuliani, Bill Gates, Fortune Magazine, Business Week. So that literally is an important step to get that authority, or should I say permission, from your brain and give it to the author. That helps you. Then I get to that introduction and first chapter, and then I get to that last chapter. Then the sixth step is I come back and I isolate, depending on how much time I have left, I isolate one or two chapters I'm going to focus on. And then lastly, if I still have more time to go, I'll kind of find a place to start, maybe back in the beginning, or maybe I'll go to the next chapter. So those are 7 kind of components. There's no exact science. You're going to refine this a little bit your way, a little bit that way. You're going to be a little bit wanting to be like, no, Ty, I don't want to do all that. Don't get rid of all 7 of these. You might skip one of these steps. Maybe you don't want to read, just first and the last, or maybe you want to skip the table of contents. I recommend, for now, try all 7 of those angles to the book. For now, try not to go crazy and do weird techniques and little, people have special devices and apps and eye training things. And that's all good, but remember, this guy has 50 years of business knowledge. I'm not realistically going to get it in one 15-minute interval. Although, the more you lift weights, the stronger you'll be with your body. And in the same way, the more you do, the more you'll be able to absorb. You'll be surprised doing this for the next 67 days. At the end of the 67 days, how much more you will be able to take in 15 minutes. Or maybe your interval 6 minutes a day. Once you get done with these 67 these 67 days of reading, I want you to up the interval a little bit. Don't go crazy. As Charlie Munger says, step by step you get ahead, but not necessarily in fast spurt. He starts by saying, go to bed a little bit wiser than you were before. Step by step you get ahead, not in fast spurts. You don't need to try to bench press 500 pounds with your body or with your brain on day 1. Bench press 50 pounds or 5 pounds if you're that weak. Read 1 minute a day. move to 2, move to 6, move to 12. Try to get to 15 minutes. 18 months from today, if you're starting today, I'd like you to read 15 minutes 3 times a day. That's 45 minutes a day. But not today, not tomorrow, not next month. Do it in 67-day increments till you slowly build up 18 months from now to being a machine. If you read 45 minutes a day in the techniques you have learned today, you will for sure be able to get through 50 books a year. And you'll probably be more like 100 books a year. That means 1,000 books a decade. Now, or I should say, it might not be 1,000 new books, but it'll be 1,000 passes through a book per decade. Some of them will be repeat books on your 150. But of course, your 150 book list is always being revamped and a new book dropped in and a new one taken out, better replaced with this, that, and the other thing. So over the course of your life, your career, the prime of your life, you will get through vast quantities of knowledge. You will skip the trial, tribulations, and errors that so many people make. You will make some mistakes. You will make errors. That is the human experience. But like Charlie Munger says, you'll make less than most people. You can maybe avoid the big painful ones. You can maybe build, like Sir Isaac Newton said, if I'm tall, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. So I hope this has been helpful. There may be a day when I see enough people a need for even more advanced reading one. What I gave you today, even in this video here, was 7 kind of fundamental building blocks, because there's no reason to show people how to bench press 500 pounds if you're not bench pressing 100. But soon I'll release one. It'll be advanced. It'll be a little more page to page, me showing you some techniques. This is enough. I've already, implemented this. It's amazing to see people go, wow, this is working. I'm doing 7, I'm reading just front chapter, back flap content, last chapter and a few chapters in between of these how-to books. I'm getting so much. I'm reading and taking a nap and learning skills. I'm getting some classics that are cleaning up my brain and getting great thoughts, the greatest thoughts in history in my brain. At night, I'm falling asleep better, and I'm getting courage and having better dreams and waking up with ideas. That's another thing that'll happen. I didn't mention that. You start to get cool ideas because you slept on stuff that was rewarding and an investment in yourself. So to close this out and close this series out, I want you to answer a few things. Number one, and this sounds a weird question, are you willing to commit to do multiple passes through a book? I talked about 6 or 7 passes through a book. It's going to feel so unnatural because no one ever told you that. They just told you read a book from start to finish. But that's not a rule of nature. It's not a law of physics you must conform to. It's not a law of gravity. No rule that I can't read a book however I want. So are you willing to commit for the next 67 days to read a little bit unconventionally? That's the first question. You can say yes, no, and write a little bit about your thoughts about that. Number 2, are you willing to commit to 67 days of doing this to rewire your brain? Say yes, and maybe say a little comment. What do you think will be easy? What do you think will be hard? Number 3, are you willing to then have an 18-month time frame? And in that 18 months, you'll step by step, 67 days at a time, slowly ratchet up the amount of books that you read. Say yes or no in the third question and your thoughts about what it's going to take for you to actually do that. Maybe you need to buy some more books. Maybe you need to look at my book list or other book lists. Maybe you need to throw some books away. Maybe you need to commit and do it with a friend. Do a challenge. By the way, if you refer people to our site, it really helps grow and you can help other people and they can do the challenge with you. Okay? So I hope this has been helpful. Stay tuned in the coming months for some more, even more advanced stuff. But this is enough for now. Remember, check out, there should be a link somewhere around here to get the memory stuff. That's a whole separate teaching that I do on how have recall, not just of the books you read, but of everything. How to remember quotes and how to remember your to-do lists and all that. So the other thing is, if you are in business, check out the level 2, the mini MBA entrepreneur stuff. If you're making over $1 million, check out the inner circle that I have, private, invitation only, working with me. There should be a form you can submit just to see if it'd be good to work together. Level 2 is this mini MBA investor entrepreneur. And if you're just getting started out, make sure you're in the regular 67 steps and VIP coaching. Come on the calls twice a month with me. We talk about health, wealth, love, and happiness with the world's smartest people in books, interviews, and so on. So thanks so much. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook. I post a lot of my reading. That's one thing you'll see how I read in my schedule. Okay? So thank you so much. And stay strong. Read more. But get an end result that you want, the good life, health, wealth, love, and happiness. Talk to you soon.